Oh my goodness, yes. So I thought I'd venture out into the relationship advice forum on Reddit. Welcome back to episode 10 of Simply Simple. Not only episode 10, we are the final episode of season 1.
How exciting. Thank you to everyone who's been with us for this journey. It's been a ride through different topics of different importance and variety of areas.
You look very uncertain,
That's just my new look.
very ominous.
I've just shaved my beard, so now I have to say weird
He's
things.
trying to stay as a co-host. That's the real reason.
Yeah, I've actually de-aged 5 years because of this.
De-aged.
De-aged, yes.
Interesting word.
I don't know if it is a word, but I would just say it anyway.
Anyways, probably is. You're always right. Welcome back to our final episode of season 1. It's been a very interesting journey having to pivot, plan, and honestly navigate the world of podcasting and getting creative, which has been quite fun, but at times challenging as well.
Yes, we can do a reflection episode later, maybe.
Mm.
But for now, we're going to go straight into our topic. Time is short. People's time is important. We are in travel season, July. Travel out of
And
Australia.
financial year just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
People are billing their customers.
Yeah, we got to do the Simply Simple taxes. It's going to be.
I
I don't know what we're going to report.
Absolutely outsourcing that.
Yeah, we have so much revenue, so it's gonna be. I don't know where to start.
I would like to insert crickets from like our very first few episodes.
If you have a good business accountant who's used to large numbers, let us know.
Yes.
So, so we're going to talk about relationship standards and therapy. It's a very interlocutory. No, that's not the right word.
Interlocutory. Why would you even think about using that word?
Interlocking. I mean interlocking.
Interlocking. So let's do a little recap of the last 2 episodes. We talked about consumerism and we talked about the subscription economy, which were 2 different and interesting but related topics. And I don't know about you, Drew, but I feel like I've just been seeing more subscriptions pop up. Maybe I'm just a bit more, even more aware of them now online.
Yeah, pubs are everywhere. And when you talk about it, you see it. It's confirmation bias. So, but we're going to take off our economist hats and we're going to go straight into our personal experiences / what we know best, which is each other.
Actually,
no, I'm kidding. We're going to be talking about relationship standards. I can speak a lot about this. But we're not talking about our relationship standards. We're talking about
into my face.
the world's relationship standards.
Actually, I do think we're kind of biased in a way because even though we've known each other and we haven't dated previously, I feel like we will be semi-narrowed in our view of standards. But again, throw back to episode 1. These are just collective observations.
Yeah, we'll get things wrong and that's fine. What we're going to be talking about in particular is the rise of therapy culture on social media, especially with the younger people, and how that blends into relationships and how that impacts how we date, how we meet people, how we respond to conflict, and how we proceed with our dating and relationship lives. So we're going to step outside of the argy-bargy theoretical and move straight into...
I was going to repeat it, but I'm like, it's not even coming out. Argy-bargy!
Yes, so we're going to talk about first therapy and how the younger generations, I think we can agree, are more accepting generally of talking about their mental health issues compared to perhaps their parents or their older generations. But I think there is something that we just want to explore in a bit more detail today, which is the concept of therapy as content. What we mean by this is how, as we said, younger generations are now a lot more open to talking about how they feel, their anxiety, their depression. And what's happening is not just that they're talking about it to, their therapist, for example, but they're making publicly facing posts. You're looking at Reddit posts, TikTok posts, Instagram reels that talk about how people feel and essentially marketing their anxiety or marketing their mental state and getting views and attention from it. And these people, these influencers use therapy language when they talk, so they have this air of science around them. So, in a sense, you're normalizing therapy words, you're putting them into the attention of the broader public in terms of what these terms are.
What are some examples of therapy words you've observed?
I think attachment styles is a big one. I think people talk about, especially in the relationship context, where people have described or defined themselves as having these attachment styles, for example, as avoidant or as clingy is the wrong word, but
Well, like words like needy,
yeah, like
golden retriever kind of
yeah,
words.
exactly. People have just defined themselves using these terms, and I think that they do have a root in psychology.
I think it's a very Gen Z way of attributing personality styles to like different words. Like one thing I've been hearing a lot is like retriever energy, and that's like the equivalent of calling someone overly happy and clingy.
Yeah, of course, and bring it up only because it's us moving towards this idea that we are defined by our emotional states and our mental states. So, if, for example, using the attachment styles, if I say, if I make a post, I have an avoidant attachment style, for example, I think it's hard not to see yourself use that frame of mind when dealing with things that come up in your life, and especially in the relationship context. So now you suddenly have this idea that I am an avoidant person, so I have to deal with situations in this way or that way.
Can I pop in an example? And I'm not sure how relevant it is, but maybe majority of you have seen or heard Justin Bieber's standing on business car park little scenario. And every time, or maybe not every time, but maybe majority of the time you see Justin maybe by himself or with Haley or with friends, he's quite aggressive, but he's not necessarily aggressive, but he's framed to be aggressive against the paparazzi. And a lot of people have now framed him as someone who gets angry easily or has like anger issues because they're attributing to like what they see. But what they don't see is that he may just be sensitive against paparazzi or he just wants to be a bit protective. So it's kind of that assumption that you're something that people assume, but in reality, that you're not.
Well, it's a good example actually because people use his viral rant. I don't know what you call it.
Standing on business.
Standing on business, exactly. They use that as sort of an emotional meme, and that's like the content is his emotions, and that's kind of where I'm going at here, where people are using these quite vulnerable emotions as ways to kind of express themselves, define themselves, and make their brands. And why do I bring all this up? Why is this all relevant? Well, I guess there's two effects to this. I think the first is, like I said, defining yourselves by identities that are derived from psychology. And I think second, and perhaps more importantly, these ideas that might come from psychology are now normalized, and people now feel a lot more comfortable diagnosing themselves with conditions or things they might have heard through social media, things that perhaps normally a psychologist would say, but now people feel like they are now experts in this area because it's now so normalized. And that's what I think is really interesting when it comes to relationships, which you will talk to about now.
Well, a classic example of like an area of so-called expertise, particularly in the online world, or I've kind of in conversations in person have experienced other people saying is that they have self-diagnosed themselves with ADHD. And the New York Times did a really good episode. I think it was the New York Times who did a phenomenal episode talking to a psychologist around self-diagnosis and the age of trying to self-educate yourself on your own advice or online advice, which has been quite interesting. So I thought that was something to raise.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think what other people have commented on is it's popularizing the language of therapy, but perhaps not the substance of what the therapy is as well. So I thought that's quite interesting, and we can perhaps dive into that
Mm.
impact and how that goes into the relationship context. Now, did you want to kick us off in terms of? So we're talking about therapy. We're talking about how we define ourselves. How does that work in terms of the popularization of this language when it comes to diagnosing relationships?
Popularization. That's a big
This
word.
is a big scientific
You're
episode,
really throwing words on me this
but
episode.
it's really vibes
So,
plus.
are we speaking in terms of like social media and how self diagnosis and such and attributing personality styles is common online?
I guess we're yeah. So it's talking about people are now more comfortable talking about therapy concepts. People are more identify themselves with certain personality styles that might have ordinarily been what psychologists or would have done. So how does that impact how people deal with relationships, how people think about relationships,
Mm.
how people give advice about
I think
relationships?
people have stepped into the role of a psychologist. And I think, especially online, when you see Reddit, the Ask Reddit or Relationship Advice forum, which has 16 million Reddit followers, many people have stepped into the shoes of trying to give advice to a stranger whom they have never met at all. And it's quite interesting because being someone who views a post about, someone who's trying to get relationship advice, and then you have like 194 comments trying to give them advice on Reddit or even TikTok as well. I personally feel a sense of comfort. It's kind of like speaking to your friends if you want advice. And I guess in a way, it kind of feels a bit like stigma when you do consult like a professional psychiatrist or psychologist, because you do kind of feel like you're kind of dooming yourself or kind of quote unquote failing if you resort straight to a professional. And who knows, maybe people use online platforms to kind of supplement their professional consultations. But going to your point, you have a lot of trending hashtags around anxiety and a lot of self diagnosis kind of aspects. And I think the online world is just a place where you kind of want validation on your thoughts and maybe people to prompt various perspectives that you may not have necessarily heard from your friends or family. So yeah, one thing is TikTok therapy, really huge. We all know Reddit. I don't know if anyone has ever consulted Reddit before for advice, but I feel like there's like this shared anxiety, like the age of anxiety on TikTok. And I feel like the more memes that we make out of it, we're all trying to make something comedic out of something that honestly should not be comedic.
It's a good point. And do you see any issues with people turning to Reddit or TikTok for advice in terms of
Mm.
are they trusting people they shouldn't perhaps trust to give sound relationship
Oh,
advice?
absolutely. Oh my goodness, yes. So I thought I'd venture out into the relationship advice forum on Reddit. Not that we need any, but you'll never know. But it's actually quite interesting because you see a lot of people commenting on what to do, but on the severe side of something. And I feel like there is an aspect of irrationality around certain advice that is given. So I think I go back to what I said, that resorting to a professional is often seen as your last resort. You want to kind of get informal advice first, but you have a false sense of expertise, which is a huge kind of observation online. And I think that Reddit forum and given some of the advice that people give and how dramatic and exaggerated advice can be online is a clear example.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of linked to what we were talking about is that people just feel like they have a lot more familiarity with these terms and they can diagnose someone just because they've heard of these concepts before, like, oh, this is gaslighting, or this is like toxic, or this is, they have all these labels that they can apply to things. And I think the unfortunate reality is sometimes it's simple, like this podcast,
Not as simple as we
but
think.
sometimes it's very complicated and complex, and it's not as easy as just giving labels and applying them to things. So yeah, I mean, it is very extreme, some of the advice you see on these things. And I know, I hope people aren't relying on it too much sometimes
I think
because everyone will break up with everyone over the minor bit of conflict, you know? It's all a bit strange.
maybe if it's not already, GPT is like the new kind of relationship advice. But I do want to really touch on the last point that we noted down is basically pulling everything and kind of criticizing everything more than we ever have.
Mm.
Like if someone, for example, I'll give maybe a most basic example where your male, I don't know, your where was I going with that? Your partner doesn't open the door for you, and then people are like, "Oh, he's not a gentleman," but it's kind of like you can open your door yourself. People over exaggerate things, but also
Not just the not a gentleman, it's like, oh, he doesn't care for you. He's
yeah,
like
that's
not
right.
right for you. You deserve better. And
Yeah,
it's just
well, that's exactly the relationship advice forum summed up. So, I think people really pull things apart and criticize every single aspect. And honestly, it becomes an overwhelming spiral. And I think we may have talked about this in episode 1 as well, where we just have so many considerations in our head where we ourselves also mentally spiral because we're so overwhelmed and we just end up not making a decision or perhaps staying in the same situation or making a completely deviated decision as a consequence.
yeah, and it's a bit of a change from the past because if you sought advice on your relationships before, you used to kind of speak to your friends, speak to people you had a relationship with, but now you kind of trust
Hmm.
these platforms and you trust, some random Reddit or TikTok user whose algorithm of doom scrolling leads them to this
I
content.
love how we, depend on GPT. It's like this senpei of like a relationship advice or advice hub, and then you see Reddit, and it's just like, oh, Reddit and TikTok so exaggerated. Maybe GPT is exaggerating
Well,
things.
I was just trying to say that people are turning, like, think about how many random people could look at your, like, let's say I made a post on relationship
Mm.
advice being like, my podcast co-host is bullying me or something. Like, how do I
I was
deal?
not expecting that.
How do I deal with it? Like, can you imagine how many random people would come across that? It'll be like,
Yeah.
yeah, you might have like someone our age talking about it, but you might have like a 13-year-old guy
Yeah.
who'll be like, "Oh, break up with her. She sounds awful." And like maybe like a 50-year-old being like, young people are so I don't know. You just get all this
No, but
wide range
it's
of
also the
terms.
terminology that comes out of like
You
all of
don't
this.
even know who's who. Like you don't know who's giving the advice.
Yeah, but
Is it a 10-year-old? I don't know. Like, is
exactly.
that a
It's like a
problem?
10-year-old who's like sitting in the parents' home, hasn't, has jigged as we call school that day. Like, I don't know. But also you hear new terminology, like, emotional labor, you hear delulu as well. Like it's
Therapy speak. It's impacting all of our relationships.
you know what I was watching the other day?
Yeah.
It was what was that? It's the show that's before Seven News, where you have to verse like the person who knows all the answers. It's a trivia game. But anyway, so they had she looked like 30 years old or so, and then you had another lady who was like double her age, right? And the host pretty much asked a question as to he asked two like Gen Z questions. One of them was which Kardashian has the brand La is it La Femme from Kourtney Kardashian? Apologies, I don't pay attention. But and so he asked that to the grandma and she was like, I have no idea which Kardashian it is. And then the host was like, throw out a name. Who do you think it could be? And she's like, Lisa. And then you have the young one who got it right. And I just thought that, that was quite an age biased question. Nothing stopping grandma from watching Kardashians, but I thought, there's all these new terminologies flying around. Everything has become delulu.
Delulu, that's a good word.
But Drew, I want to talk a little bit about stats because you love your stats. And ever since you told me that stats are like bikinis, I've really taken it into heart.
Okay, well, what stats do you have for us today?
Yes. Well, did you know that TikTok therapy, the hashtag, which is still trending, has over 2 billion views as of 2024? That's a lot.
A lot of people who now, like I said, a lot of people now talk like this
Yes.
and diagnose themselves, diagnose others. It's all
And
crazy.
famously, it includes 30-second videos or hot takes on things like attachment styles, green flags, relationship advice, boundaries as well. So it's all interesting as well. I actually kind of frowned upon this one because I'm like, surely something's a little bit sus here. But Hinge, their 2023 survey, they reported that 91% of Gen Z users cared more around emotional maturity than attractiveness or what I frowned upon, career success. Interesting.
I disagree. I don't buy it.
Yeah. Hinge, how many people did you actually? You know what? When they do these surveys, and I will rightfully call you all out, and even though I did read your stat, I'm not saying you're correct or incorrect. I'm just reading them out. So thank you for another 2 billion views from Simply Simple.
I will refer back to my stats quote when
But
I think of the Hinge quote.
But what is their like population size, right? Like, you know, they survey like 20 people and they're like majority of Gen Z
I
people.
think we're going to dig into the report and find out the methodology.
It's interesting, huh?
91% saying emotional maturity is more important than attractiveness. Look, I think this is, we go back to episode 1. I think this is what you say and what you do.
Yeah.
It's probably very different. So, did you want to move on to our segment?
Yes, of course. Okay. This is my favorite segment, and we're going to play a fun game. I'm so excited about this one. Okay, I'm really.
You should collate every time you say I'm so excited.
No, I actually am, and we can collate that too. Okay, so this game is called. Everything kind of throws me back to like episode 1, like relationship advice and no fish in the sea and TikTok therapy. Quite interesting. The game is called Is It a Green Flag or Is It delulu? See, I'm incorporating.
I don't know what delulu means.
It means
I
like
never heard of that word before today.
delulu equals red flag, you millennial. Anyway, so yes,
Okay.
delulu.
I'm too old.
I don't think I've ever used the word delulu.
I've never heard you ever say delulu.
Exactly. I just still think it's delulu to use. Anyway, so I'm going to read out a statement.
My new Reddit post. My partner uses the word delulu. Should I end the relationship immediately?
Someone comments, leave her. She's not worth it. Emotional baggage, so much late. Anyways, all the buzzwords. Okay, so I'm basically going to read out a hot take, and you're going to either mark it as green flag or delulu, which, as I said, is equivalent to
What if
red
I
flag.
think it's neither, or do I have to choose one of the buckets?
You have to choose what you're leaning towards.
Okay.
So an estimate, and you have to give me a reason why. Okay,
But
so
you have to also give your view and reason.
of course. Okay, here we go. The first one. If he doesn't text back within 5 minutes, he's emotionally unavailable.
Green flag. You know why? They have purpose and ambition in their life. Maybe
I
they
feel
could be
like
lazy too, but I'm gonna go with the green flag. They're doing something else. They're adding value to the world, to society. People reply back when they reply back. You know.
I feel like emotionally unavailable is quite strong to use. Maybe they are emotionally available, but they're just not available at the time to see your message.
Yeah. What if I'm in the shower? Like, you know, like I'm still available. I'm emotionally available.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
feel
not-
like there's
I'm just
very
not there.
strong words
Yeah.
to use. All right, so
Did
you're
you get
going.
this from Reddit? Did someone say this?
Yeah, so a few of these have been plucked out from Reddit.
Oh, God.
So you're going green flag on the first one or delulu. I think it's delulu.
I mean, wait, you think it's a red flag?
Well, yeah, because
Like, who's the red flag?
the person saying this,
Ah, yeah.
I don't think they're emotionally unavailable. I just think they're unavailable.
Exactly. I think you're adding a lot of loaded
People
language
are
there.
busy paying the bills.
So,
Right.
so we're deluluing the statement person.
That's right.
Okay.
The hot take.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I should have been a bit more clearer.
That's all right.
Second, I won't date someone who doesn't journal.
I mean, you do what you want. I mean, like,
Is journal a requirement now?
I wouldn't call it either green flag or delulu, but If I had to say, it's delulu, because you're probably limiting yourself too much.
Mm.
you've got to, not swim in the lake. You got to swim in the ocean.
Wow, that's a good line.
Thank you. So like
Swim in the lake and not the ocean. I'm
the
not
other way
letting.
around, other way around.
Oh, swim in the ocean and not the lake?
That's right. There's
Oh,
less fish in the lake, so you got to go to the ocean and swim there.
wow.
Yeah.
What if I, kind of flip it back and maybe it's better being in the lake because you've got more of a refined selection?
It's a well, I would say that you're trying to find someone,
Mm.
and if there's less fish in the lake, you might not find anyone.
I feel like that's a little bit strange in the sense that if you won't date someone, sorry, who doesn't journal, I'm not going to say your expectations are unrealistic. I think they are slightly getting out of hand, respectfully. Anyways, third, he has female friends. That's a boundary for me.
I think it's delulu.
Delulu.
Delulu, yes, because
I'm going to turn the lights on, but you can tell our viewers what your reasoning is.
sure thing. I think it is a bit delulu to expect someone to eliminate themselves from half the population in terms of having friends. I mean, sure, you can have boundaries with those friends themselves and like what you do with those friends, but I think just having a friend of the different gender, I don't think that is. I mean, you can enforce it. Don't get me wrong, and that's up to you, and that's your prerogative.
Mm.
But I think that like I said, you're probably limiting yourself a bit too much if you did do that. If you ask me.
I'm also quite confused when they say that's a boundary for me. Let me just
You want to
step
come
back
back
in.
into
I am.
frame?
I kind of felt a bit alone on the side. I feel like it is a little confusing because what do you mean it's a boundary for you? Isn't it also a boundary for him as well?
As in, like, you can't.
You can't speak to anyone else but those known
I'm
friends.
the only female/male you can talk to. Depends on
Quite
who.
interesting. Wow, there's a lot of light.
Yeah,
My eyes. Anyways, so did you say you're going to Lulu on this one
I
for
am
sure?
going to delulu on this one.
Fabulous. All right, the next one. He didn't get me flowers on our second date, and that equals to low effort. Completely delulu. Surely.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that's delulu? Fuck, if I did that, you'd say the same thing.
If you paid for my meal, I would be honored.
Okay.
But I don't know how, look, I
Flowers on the
don't know how
second
the
date. I
dating
don't know.
works.
Yes.
Maybe,
And the flowers on the second date. I don't think it's mandatory. I would also probably say
yeah, I feel like maybe a few dates in. The second date, you're still getting to know the
yeah.
person. Maybe you don't even know if they have allergies to flowers. Like, you can't be sure.
Exactly. It's all about safety and
Shocking TikTok and Reddit. All right, so if they don't go to therapy, I won't even consider dating them. I think that's a you thing, but it really depends on who you're dating. If it's a complete psycho, please leave.
the more money they spend on therapy, the less money they spend on you. So
Whoa.
delulu.
Oh, that's the hot take right there. All right. All right, Sags, the next one. Oh god, this sounds like me.
Okay, let's hear it. I don't know.
What, you didn't look at these,
No,
huh?
no, I haven't looked at these.
He should just know what I'm feeling. I don't have to explain it.
It's obviously a green flag.
I'm not talking on this one.
Obviously, it's a very sensible idea that the person you're dating should know everything about you without you saying a word. That's
Mm.
very rational and logical.
Yeah, I think there's like a line of like, I don't want to say common sense. I don't want to say that. Like, if a person is frowning and they look sad, or like, if you rock up to a reservation like 15, 20 minutes late, of course that is going to be saddening or frustrating to the other person on the date. But I also do consider the other side of it, where if you have been seeing this person for like 3, 4 years, been together with them for that amount of time, surely there's like this reasonable expectation or known feeling that you'll get what they're feeling. Not all, but maybe some. Moving on before things get a little spicy. Okay. He should just. Oh, no, sorry. That's the wrong one. If she doesn't get along with my dog, it's a deal breaker. What?
Yeah, that's a green. That's a logical statement to make as
That's
well.
probably the best non-delulu one I've ever come across.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, I will. I will. I think that's very important. So, it's
And
very-
plus, like, it's kind of like any family friends, or even like if you owned like a fish or a cat or a giraffe, like you're always going to have to be around them. You can't avoid it.
yeah, you can't ask them to sell their pet or something. It's
Yeah.
very.
That's sad if you have to hide your pet every time. I won't date someone who doesn't have a skincare routine.
Why does this all sound like you?
Oh, I didn't know shots were being fired today. Hey, I'm just I haven't said that word in a while.
You colloquially,
Colloquially.
colloquially. Okay.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
What's the question?
I won't date someone who doesn't have a skincare routine. I feel like it really depends on the person.
You know
Maybe,
what? Green
maybe
flag this one too.
oh,
You people have hygiene standards, and I think it's fair to enforce them. Maybe this is too far. Honestly, a lot of these I'll be in the middle. I'm like, you do what you want, but if I have to lean one direction, I will lean.
yeah, and I don't think a routine
Mhm.
necessarily means like a 12-step process. I just think that if they wake up and they wash their face and then put on whatever desired cream or whatever, that's more than enough, right?
But I will also say some people actually have no idea, and maybe you should give them a chance.
Exactly right.
So
Exactly right. Don't be so rude. Anyways, okay. If he doesn't post me on socials, he's hiding something. Okay, can I speak to this? I think that's completely delulu. In the sense that some men or women, is it saying he or he? Some men,
it's gender neutral. You can say
I was
whatever.
gonna say, I'm like, I'm just
Either
waiting
way,
for
either
you
way,
to say.
either way.
I'm just gonna say some people, especially nowadays, are diverting away from being on social media. Just like this co-host over here, he is not on socials, and that doesn't mean that he is not into me. I would hope, or he's hiding something. It
I actually have 1 million accounts on the relationship advice
actually
page. Yeah,
really.
yeah. I just spent
Oh,
that page with
dude,
mine.
that's the use a big dog 243 that I was reading the other day. Anyways, no, I think that this is quite unreasonable of an assumption. They're not hiding something. Maybe they just don't want to be in the social media scape. They're not even missing out being on social media.
Yeah, plenty of reasons. They're not hiding you, they're hiding themselves.
All right. I need someone who matches my emotional intensity from day one. What do you define as emotional intensity? Like you have the scale of
Delulu.
nice or delulu. Crazy.
This is Delulu. This sounds like something Delulu people will say. I've never used the word Delulu again, apart from this podcast.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I absolutely agree on this one. I think that it's also a you kind of thing I'm leaning towards. Like, I don't know what you think of emotional intensity. I think your partner can support you in times of like doubt or like you're feeling down. But if you're constantly raging, Drew is like, what's going on here? Sounds a little similar. I feel like if you're constantly like up there, delulu, crazy, psycho status, that is a you problem. Respectfully, as I will add always. And the final hot take, Drew. See, this one is a bit crazy. I won't date her unless she has my star sign.
You,
Isn't that coming into our podcast where people are like, oh, they're a Leo, they're XYZ because they're a Leo? Like, no one cares.
I won't offend people who like star signs.
We like star signs, but stop making assumptions.
Look at it. Like I said, if I had to lean, it is a bit Delulu. I mean, like I said, you can believe what you want, but you're narrowing the pool of people you can be with. And like I said, you've got to build a broad tent of
Mm.
people
I
rather than
have,
narrowing it
I have
down.
a question for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Would you rather your criteria be based on whether a person journals or not, or whether they're your star sign? I feel like star signs are semi reasonable.
I'd rather star signs because you know what? That we probably have like similar birthdays and we can like be more efficient with planning.
With pricing. Just buy one birthday
You can take
cake.
leave at the same time. You can have, you can have two birthdays like very close by together. think of all the efficiency gains. I actually look that one. I can see some logic.
Not a bad idea. You raise good points. Well, our birthdays aren't too far apart, so maybe we can consider doing that. Got a wedding to plan. So, anyways, and that was the game, Drew. It seems like a majority became delulu. So, I guess the only reasonable one is the dog hot take, of course.
The dog and skincare, I think.
Is that it? Mm,
Wow.
yeah. Wow. Okay. Well,
Maybe I just have low standards.
I gotta make them high again. Anyways, well, what does that mean for us, Drew? Where are we heading with everything in mind, given TikTok therapy and given advice from strangers online that now people are resorting to?
I just think we're being too scientific about what's going on in life sometimes. I like data, as we all know that,
Mm-hmm.
but like, there's a time and place for it, and I think that sometimes vibes is a good way of proceeding.
Someone listening to this episode will be like, "Who are these Gen Zs speaking?"
But sometimes you just have to like trust your gut, understand the emotional side without resorting to like therapy terms and like labeling things and identifying things, certain things. I mean, look, sometimes that's true and sometimes that's
Yeah.
what it is, but have more of an open
Mm,
mind, I think, and just be, recognize problems when they are problems, but otherwise don't try and like
correct.
ruin your relationship by trying to diagnose every little thing as
Yeah.
issues or concerns or
Or like
problems.
breaking everything apart and then completely overwhelming and the both of you, and then you just both of you become so tired because you're trying to decrypt everything. But as Drew said, take things as they are, and there's no need to kind of overcomplicate or even make comparisons or similarities to these social media platforms, which, as we said, aren't professional advice, and people who may claim that they are giving professional advice in the comment section may not be professionals. They could be the 10-year-old sitting in their bedroom skipping school. So we never know. Anyways, Drew, we mentioned a little bit about the entitled. Did we mention? I don't know, but we are mentioning now the entitlement gap. What is that about?
Well, it's really about the gap between what you expect in other people versus what you expect in yourself. And I think just trying to, given therapy speak, broadly speaking, how we talk about these things, it's almost like we're kind of expecting everyone to fill into different buckets, but we're not considering, necessarily, and we might want people to change or we might want people to do something differently, but we won't apply that same lens to ourselves and our own actions in the sense of I don't need to change, they should change for me,
Mm.
kind of thing. Look, I have this style. It's up to them to change. I don't know. It's all
You're
very
kind of concreted in your position or being stubborn about it.
yeah, yeah. You have your identity and they have theirs, but they're the ones who have to change it, not you. So
Mm.
that's really that entitlement gap, if that's how you want to phrase it.
I think it kind of reframes, and you see this line like in movies or even in person as well, where I'll meet someone one day who's for me, or I'll meet someone who enjoys doing this with me. I feel like often we, I guess, need a shape to the people around us and not try to be de-influenced from.
He influenced, eh?
Yeah. Have you seen there's actually, and this is very interesting. I want some psychologists or anyone out there to talk about this, but there is a de influencing trend on TikTok, for example. What's going on?
It's de-influencing as
You're
influencing
looking at my
content.
mic. It's very
I was
funny, isn't
thinking, I
it?
was thinking.
So basically, people are trying to de influence you from a certain trend. For example,
So they're influencing you by de-influencing you.
correct. Maybe I'll show you one of those, but it's people basically trying to show you that it's not all that it appears online. So if someone romanticizes a 9 to 5, there will always be the other person, showing the realities of, for example, commuting a while away, waking up feeling burnt out. So it's more of a reality series, I guess, and less romanticization of trends.
Yeah, that's actually good, interesting content. I mean, you're selling. Yeah, it's that maybe is worth more discussion at a later time. But yeah, I think people are just less tolerant of flaws. Flaws aren't okay now.
People pick on, like, people literally just identify a flaw.
Yeah.
Or if people
Over discussing flaws.
Well, that's the other thing as well. I feel like every time someone like picks out something, a so-called flaw, colloquially a flaw. I really want to try to say
Colloquially.
I know.
I gotta do a grammar episode.
It is a bit of a tongue twister. On paper, it's okay, but when you're saying it out loud, just terrible. Wow, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes, flaws. So I feel like when you are piecing apart and, someone and being like, oh, that's a flaw, they're not that great or they're terrible at that, I feel like we kind of need to rejig. I feel like I've used jig a lot, but kind of reframe certain perspectives. If someone has a so-called flaw, maybe it's just an area of development that they haven't realized themselves or haven't been exposed to. So I don't know, or maybe they're working on. So I don't know. We definitely are sometimes exaggerating aspects online.
Yeah, I agree, and that's going to be a wrap for this episode.
Oh wow, already.
Already, we're going to call it
Season 1, Drew. That went by very fast, and of course we had a little bit of a break in between intermission. We were actually going to film this earlier. There's also a little bit of bad weather, busy weekends, but here we are. That wraps up a good season. Drew, how do you feel with season 1 now being over?
I feel very accomplished.
Maybe we can upload some games.
We can upload everything, now.
I really want to play that game where like you get a cardboard box and you put like drinks and the other person knows what drinks they are. And then you take a sip out of the straw coming out of the cardboard box and you try to guess what they are. Maybe I can do one for you, different flavors of tea. That'd be mad.
Yeah, that would be an idea. If anyone else has any ideas, let us know.
Yes.
What do you want to see from us?
That's true. Well, I'm sure season 2 will be interesting with more topics. We have a brainstormed list of topics to talk about in season 2.
Yeah, this is like the feeling out season, just dabbling into different things.
That's right.
Be like, what should we talk about? What should we avoid? What is interesting to other people?
Most importantly, what do you like as well? I mean, we've got things around relationships, dating, advice, social media, subscription economy. Maybe you want a whole episode around food and the fast food culture as well. I like that idea. Yeah, I hope we have that Trelloed down. But anyways, thank you for tuning in to the season. We really appreciate the engagement we have been having. We have an audience, which is awesome.
Yeah, and where's who's going to be the next co-host?
I'm not sure. Look, you shaved your beard, so it kind of confused me.
If you want to apply, email us, and we have an email on
Editing Drew. You can insert our email here.
And I'll put it in the Spotify description.
Yes. And maybe at the same time you can insert here. Editing Drew. Hey,
I'm already getting delegated all this work.
Pronunciations being screwed up for like a 30-second.
Colloquial.
Yep, zoom in on that as well.
Wait. Colloquial. I'll get it right before we go off. Colloquially. Is that it?
Insert 10 years later.
Colloquially.
Anyway, something colloquially.
Colloquially.
We hope you enjoyed tuning in to this mess of an episode. Apologies for ending it like so, and maybe by season 2 you will be very much used to saying the word.
Colloquially.
Anyways, farewell, and the grip on my hand is phenomenal. Bye-bye.